My stepkids said they only respect their real dad, mocked my late husband, and told my kids their father didn't matter. So I cut off every privilege I paid for, packed their stuff, and told their mom to come get them. No one dared talk back. Hey, Reddit, I've been reading stories on here for years, but never thought I'd share one of my own. Let's just say blending families isn't as simple as people make it sound. I learned a lot about respect, boundaries, and what it really means to be a parent when things got messy. Really messy. So, here's my story. I, Andrea A. Allen, 42, female, a mom to two amazing kids, Maya, 12, female, and Andrew, 9, male. Their dad, Eric, passed away 4 years ago. Cancer, the kind that doesn't give you time to make sense of it. Losing him nearly broke me. But when you've got two kids who still need breakfast every morning, you don't get the luxury of falling apart for long. For a long time, it was just the three of us. I learned how to braid hair, pack lunches that didn't look like survival rations, and fake smiles when my daughter missed her dad too much to sleep. I didn't think I'd ever want another relationship, but then Harold came along. Harold was like a warm spring day after years of winter. He was kind, smart, and he got it. He was divorced, raising two kids of his own. Jason was 16, Chloe was 14. Both polite, both well-mannered when I met them. When we decided to move in together, I honestly thought we were going to nail this whole blended family thing. Maya and Andrew were thrilled. Maya talked nonstop about having a big sister to share secrets with, and Andrew couldn't wait to play video games with Jason. The morning we moved in, my son was bouncing around the living room yelling, "We finally have a full house." He didn't mean it like the TV show. He meant it like his heart finally felt full again. The first week was picture perfect. Jason and Chloe were quiet but polite. They helped carry boxes, said thank you, and didn't complain once. I thought, this is it. This is what a second chance looks like. The first Friday night we had everyone together for dinner, I decided to cook. Nothing fancy. Steak, potatoes, and corn on the cob. It smelled amazing, and even Harold said the kitchen felt like home. We all sat down, plates steaming, and for a few minutes, it was exactly how I'd imagined it. Laughter, small talk, Andrew telling an over-the-top story about a frog he found at school. Then Jason, between bites, leaned back in his chair and said, "My dad makes better steak. He seasons it right." The table went quiet. Harold shot him a look, but he just kept chewing like nothing happened. I didn't raise my voice. I put my fork down and looked straight at him. "Good for your dad," I said calmly. "Maybe one day he can come teach me, but until then, this is what's on the table. You're welcome to eat it or not." The kid blinked like he wasn't expecting pushback. Chloe's fork froze midair. Andrew looked between us nervously. I smiled, not angry, just steady. "Eat up, it's going to get cold." Harold tried to lighten the mood after that, talking about weekend plans, but I could tell Jason didn't like that I hadn't backed down. I didn't need him to like me, though. I needed him to respect me. After dinner, Maya and Chloe went upstairs to compare playlists, and Andrew started unpacking a small box he'd brought from his old room. It was labeled Dad. Inside were photos, a couple of letters, and a snow globe Eric had given him before he got too sick to leave bed. He took out a framed photo of Eric and asked, "Mom, can I hang this up?" "Of course," I said. He'd like that. He picked a spot on the hallway wall right by the stairs where everyone could see it. The photo was simple. Eric sitting on the grass laughing. His hair was short from chemo, but his smile still outshined the sun. While Andrew was straightening the frame, Jason walked by with his phone in his hand and muttered, "Why keep old pictures up? Kind of weird." I stopped what I was doing and turned toward him. My voice was even, but it dropped an octave. "Because he mattered," I said. "And in this house, we respect people who mattered." He didn't say anything after that, just stared for a second, then walked off. Andrew went quiet too. I crouched down next to him and said, "Hey, you did good hanging it there. He'd be proud of you." He nodded and hugged me, the kind of quick, tight hug that hits harder than any words. I should have felt peace. For the first time in years, the house was full of life again. But there was this tiny crack somewhere in the foundation, something small, almost invisible, but I could feel it. Still, I told myself it was just new family tension. We'd get past it. We had to. I didn't know then that some lessons come the hard way. I didn't know that respect, once you let it slide, never really comes back the same. 6 months after we all moved in together, the tone of the house changed. It wasn't one big fight or dramatic moment. It was small things piling up like dust you don't notice until it's everywhere. Jason and Chloe, once polite and quiet, started acting like every rule was up for negotiation. If I told Jason to take the trash out, he'd look right at me and say, "I'll wait for Dad." If I asked Chloe to put her laundry in the basket, she'd nod and then not do it. But if Harold asked, suddenly everything got done. At first, I thought maybe I was imagining it. Blended families take time, right? But one afternoon, I came home from work and overheard something that stopped me cold. The kids were in the living room. Jason and Chloe were sitting on the couch, phones in hand, and Maya and Andrew were on the floor building with Legos. Jason leaned forward and said, "You guys know you don't have to listen to her, right?" Chloe giggled. "Yeah, she's so strict. Our dad lets us stay up late and eat whatever we want." Andrew looked unsure. "But Mom said we have to." Jason cut him off. "Your dad doesn't even matter now. She's just bossy. You don't have to do everything she says." I stood there for a second behind the wall and felt my blood go cold. Then I stepped into the room. "Jason," I said evenly, "say that again." He froze. Chloe's face went pale. Maya and Andrew turned around fast. "You heard me," I continued. "Go on. You were giving my kids parenting advice. Let's hear it." He opened his mouth, but nothing came out. "Let me make something real clear," I said, my voice steady but hard. "You two don't ever tell my kids they don't have to listen to me. You're not their parents and you're not mine. This house has one set of rules, and everyone follows them. Understand?" Chloe nodded fast. Jason mumbled something like, "Yeah, fine." "Good," I said. "Then knock it off." I didn't yell. I didn't need to. The way Jason's jaw tightened told me he hated that I called him out. That night, I told Harold what happened. He sighed and rubbed his temples like I'd told him the Wi-Fi was down. "They're just adjusting, Andrea," he said. "It's a lot of change. You can't expect them to respect you overnight." 6 months is overnight? I asked. "They'll come around," he said softly. "Just give it time." I wanted to believe him, but something in my gut said he was wrong. The following weeks were full of little power plays. Jason would wait until Harold got home before doing anything I asked. Chloe would conveniently forget what I told her. Maya started testing me, too, saying things like, "But Jason said it's fine if I skip chores." I'd just look at her and say, "Jason doesn't make the rules here, sweetheart. I do." Then came the family trip. Harold had planned a weekend at the lake, a chance for all of us to bond. I loaded the car, packed snacks, made sure everyone had their swimsuits. Jason climbed into the passenger seat, earbuds already in, hood up. The first day went okay. The younger kids swam. I sunbathed with Harold nearby, and Jason mostly sulked. But that evening, when we were grilling by the cabin, Jason started in again. "Dad, can we go home? This is boring," he said loudly. "Mom would have taken us somewhere fun. She doesn't make us do lame family stuff." The way he said Mom made it clear who he meant and who he didn't. I kept flipping the burgers, pretending not to hear at first. But when Maya started looking at me like I'd done something wrong, I turned around. "Jason," I said, "you're welcome to sit in the car if family time is too hard for you. But while you're out here, you're going to be respectful. You got that?" He gave a fake laugh. "Whatever. You can't tell me what to do. You're not my mom." Harold jumped in before I could respond. "Jason, enough." He threw his hands up. "What? I'm just saying." "I said enough," Harold snapped. The rest of dinner was silent, except for the sound of bugs and the crackle of the fire. When we packed up to go home the next day, Jason didn't say a word to me the entire drive. When we pulled into the driveway, I told the kids to grab their bags. Maya and Andrew followed instructions right away. Chloe and Jason went straight upstairs like guests leaving a bad hotel. Harold and I stood in the kitchen afterward. He looked tired. "Maybe this trip wasn't such a great idea," he said quietly. "Maybe," I said, "or maybe it showed us what's actually going on." He didn't answer. That night, after everyone went to bed, I stood in the hallway looking at that framed photo of Eric on the wall. It caught a little bit of moonlight, and I thought about the kind of home he wanted for our kids, One built on love, yes, but also on respect. I wasn't sure which one we still had. Still, I kept telling myself it would get better, that if I stayed calm, fair, and firm, they'd see I wasn't the enemy. But deep down, a seed had been planted. Not anger, just a quiet kind of frustration that grows roots when no one's looking. And once it starts, it doesn't stop. The next couple of months felt like living with strangers who happened to share your address. Jason and Chloe didn't just ignore me. They acted like I wasn't even there. If I walked into a room, they'd lower their voices or leave. If I spoke, they'd glance at each other like I'd interrupted something private. At first, I tried to keep the peace. I'd remind them about chores, ask how school was going, keep my tone even, but their responses were either silence or one-word answers said without looking up from their phones. Then it got worse. They'd deliberately wait until Harold got home to start conversations, or they'd walk right past me if I told them something needed doing. Once I asked Jason to mow the lawn before the weekend. He shrugged and said, "I'll do it when Dad tells me." That one sentence told me everything. The house had split into sides, mine and theirs. One Saturday morning, I was outside cleaning the garage when I saw our neighbor, Mrs. Lawson, walking her dog. She was one of those older ladies who knew everyone on the block, always cheerful, always chatty. But that morning, she looked nervous. "Hey, Andrea," she said, tugging on her dog's leash. "Do you have a minute?" "Sure," I said, wiping my hands on a rag. She hesitated. I just wanted to check in. Everything all right at home?" That question stopped me cold. "Yeah," I said slowly. "Why?" She glanced toward the house, then back at me. "It's probably nothing. I ran into your stepkids the other day, Jason and Chloe." They were talking to my grandson out front, and they said a few things that worried me. "What kind of things?" She sighed. "They said you only let them eat at certain times, that you're really strict, and that you don't let them relax or have fun. Jason said you treat them like soldiers or something." I felt the heat rush to my face. Not embarrassment, but anger. The kind that starts in your gut and spreads like fire. "Mrs. Lawson," I said, keeping my voice measured, "I appreciate you telling me, but that's complete nonsense." "I figured as much," she said quickly. "You've always seemed like a good mom. I just didn't want rumors going around." "Yeah," I said tightly, "neither do I." She walked off, and I stood there for a minute, gripping that rag so hard it nearly tore. My stepkids were out there telling people I mistreated them, ruining my name in a neighborhood I'd worked years to build trust in. That wasn't going to slide. I marched inside. Jason and Chloe were in the living room watching TV, feet up on the coffee table like they owned the place. "Turn it off," I said. They ignored me. I stepped forward, hit the power button myself, and tossed the remote on the couch. "We're talking now." Jason rolled his eyes. "What now?" "Mrs. Lawson came by today," I said, staring him down. "She told me you've been telling people I starve you and treat you like prisoners. Care to explain?" Chloe's eyes darted to Jason. "We didn't. Don't lie to me," I snapped. "I know exactly what you said. I've done nothing but put food on the table, pay for your phones, your clothes, your sports crap, and this is how you repay me? By spreading garbage about me to the neighbors?" Jason leaned back, smirking. "Maybe if you weren't such a control freak, people wouldn't believe it." That smirk was a mistake. I stepped closer until we were eye to eye. "Listen carefully," I said quietly. "This is your last warning. If you pull one more stupid stunt like this, you'd better be ready for the consequences. And trust me, you won't like them." He stared at me but didn't speak. I could see his jaw working like he wanted to say something but couldn't find the courage. Chloe whispered, "We were just joking." "Jokes end when they damage someone's reputation," I said. "And this one ends now." I turned and walked out before I said something I'd regret. That evening, Harold came into the garage where I was fixing a shelf. "I heard you yelled at the kids," he said. "I didn't yell," I said. "I confronted them. They told me you threatened them." I set the drill down and looked him in the eye. "Harold, they've been lying to people, telling the neighbors I mistreat them. That's not a misunderstanding. That's character assassination." He frowned. "They're teenagers, Andrea. They exaggerate things. You can't take everything they say so seriously." "Exaggerate?" I said, my voice rising. "They told people I starve them. How much more exaggeration do you need before you call it what it is? Disrespect?" He crossed his arms, defensive. They're still adjusting. Stop saying that, I said sharply. It's been almost a year. At some point, they stop adjusting and start choosing how to act. And right now, they're choosing to be disrespectful. Harold didn't respond. He just walked out, muttering something under his breath. That night, the silence in the house felt heavier than ever. Maya and Andrew stayed in their rooms. Jason and Chloe laughed quietly behind closed doors, probably feeling like they'd won something. I sat on the couch in the dark, staring at the blank TV screen, listening to the hum of the refrigerator. My own house didn't feel like mine anymore, and for the first time I started wondering maybe what this family needed wasn't more understanding. Maybe it needed consequences. That thought stayed with me for days, quiet, sharp, and growing louder. Every time I walked past one of their closed doors, I'd catch myself gripping my coffee cup too tight or stopping halfway through a sentence because I knew whatever I said, they'd twist it into something ugly. Then came the day it all fell apart. It was a Thursday afternoon. I got home early from work, expecting the usual chaos. Maya doing homework, Andrew building Lego towers, and Jason glued to his phone. Instead, I walked into silence. Not the peaceful kind, the kind that makes your stomach drop. I found Andrew in his room, sitting on the floor next to a pile of glass and water. His hands were shaking and his eyes were red. "What happened, buddy?" I asked, crouching down. He pointed at the mess. "Jason. He broke it." His voice cracked. He threw it. My stomach twisted. "He threw what?" Andrew picked up a small shard of glass from the carpet. I recognized it instantly. The snow globe. The one Eric had given him before he passed. Inside it had been a tiny cabin and two little figures holding hands in the snow. Andrew had guarded that thing like treasure for years. "Where is he?" I asked. "Upstairs," Andrew whispered. He said it was stupid to cry over it. I stood up slowly, every muscle in my body tightening like a rope about to snap. Jason was on the couch in the living room, controller in hand, eyes glued to the TV like nothing had happened. "Jason," I said, my voice low. He didn't even look up. "What? Turn it off." He sighed like I was ruining his evening and paused the game. "What now?" "You broke Andrew's snow globe." He shrugged. "Yeah, it fell." "It didn't fall," I said. "You threw it." "Maybe I did," he said, smirking. He was being a baby about it. "It's just a toy." I stepped closer. "That snow globe was from his father. You had no right to touch it." He leaned back on the couch, still smirking. "Grow up. You can buy another one. That's what you're good for, right?" For a second, everything went quiet in my head. I could hear the blood in my ears, the ticking of the wall clock, the faint sound of Chloe laughing upstairs. I took a deep breath. "Stand up," I said. "Why?" "Because I said so." He stood up, half laughing. "What? You going to ground me? You can't even tell me what to do." I looked him dead in the eye. "You're right," I said calmly. "I'm not your mom." He froze. "And you're not my son," I continued. "So pack your things. Get ready to leave." His smirk faltered. "What? You heard me." "You don't respect me. You don't respect this house. And you sure as hell don't get to destroy something that belonged to my late husband. You can live with your mom since she's so much cooler." He laughed nervously, glancing toward the stairs. "You're not serious. I've never been more serious." He looked at me for a long second, maybe waiting for me to yell or lose my temper, but I didn't. I just stood there calm and solid like the decision was already carved in stone. "You can't kick me out," he said finally. "I can," I said. "And I will," he scoffed. "Dad won't let you." "Then he can go too, if he thinks this is okay." He blinked like he was realizing too late that this wasn't a game. He stormed upstairs, muttering under his breath. I didn't follow. I went straight to my home office and sat at my desk. My hands weren't shaking. My head was clear. I opened my laptop and pulled up our family accounts. Phone plan, streaming services, car insurance, mortgage, utilities, every single thing in my name. I started writing a list, not out of anger, out of logic, out of clarity. Halfway through the list, Harold came home. I heard his keys drop in the hallway, then his voice calling, "Andrea, what's going on? Jason said you threatened him." I didn't look up. "He broke Andrew's snow globe." His tone softened, like he hadn't heard me right. "What?" "The one Eric gave him." I said, "Smashed it, then laughed about it." "Oh my God," he whispered. "Yeah," I said, still typing. And then he told me I'm not his mom. Andrea, he's 16. I stopped typing and turned to face him. And I'm 42. I've lived long enough to know when I'm being disrespected in my own home. He stared at me, stunned. What are you doing? Making a list, I said. Everything in this house that's in my name. Everything I pay for. If Jason doesn't think I'm a parent, fine. But that means I'm not responsible for him either. He shook his head slowly. You can't just... I can, I said, cutting him off. And I will. He didn't say anything else. Just stood there, arms crossed, trying to understand that I wasn't bluffing. When he finally walked away, I sat back in the chair and looked at the list again. It wasn't about revenge. It was about respect, about showing that every action comes with a cost. I folded the paper, placed it neatly on the desk, and turned off the light. If I'm not their parent, I said quietly to the empty room, then I'm not responsible for them either. The next morning, I woke up before sunrise, didn't even bother with coffee at first, just sat at the kitchen table, staring at the list I'd written the night before. The decision had already been made. Now it was time to follow through. At 6:00 a.m., I started making calls. First, the phone provider. Remove 2 lines, I said. Jason and Chloe. The woman on the other end asked if I was sure. I said yes. Streaming services, passwords changed, cable canceled. By 9:00 a.m., my house was quieter than usual. Jason and Chloe's phones were cut off, and for the first time in months, I felt in control. I'd only shut off their lines. The rest of the house still had service. No need to punish everyone, just the ones who'd earned it. Harold didn't notice at first. He was at work, and Jason was still sleeping when I unplugged his game console and set it on the kitchen counter. By noon, the neighborhood grapevine was already buzzing. When I stepped outside to put the trash out, Mrs. Lawson from across the street waved me over. I heard about what happened with Jason, she said carefully. Don't let anyone make you feel bad, Andrea. Everyone around here knows those kids have been trouble since day one. I nodded. Appreciate that, Mrs. Lawson. She lowered her voice. You're doing the right thing. My husband and I have seen it. Those kids talk back to you like you're some stranger. I don't know how you've stayed so patient. Trying to set things straight now, I said simply. She gave a sympathetic smile. About time. When I went back inside, Jason was standing in the living room with his phone in his hand, face twisted in disbelief. Why isn't my phone working? He demanded. Because it's not in my plan anymore, I said flatly. Neither is Chloe's. He laughed once like I'd told a bad joke. You can't do that. I just did. You're insane, he said. Dad's going to lose it. Maybe, I said, picking up the modem from the counter, but at least you'll have a signal to call your mom. He followed me down the hallway, voice rising. You can't just kick us out because you're mad. I'm not mad, I said calmly. I'm finished. He stormed off, slamming his door hard enough to rattle the frame. That night, Harold came home just as I was making dinner for Maya and Andrew. The younger two were quiet but relaxed. Andrew humming softly, Maya setting the table. It felt like an actual family meal again. Harold dropped his keys on the counter. What did you do? Handled the situation, I said without looking up. Jason said you canceled their phones. That's not handling things, that's punishing them. It's called consequences, I said. They're kids. I finally turned to face him. They're 16 and 14, not toddlers. They know exactly what they're doing. He swallowed. You're being harsh. I set down the spatula and took a step closer. No, I'm being a parent, something you haven't been doing lately. He flinched. Excuse me? You've been enabling them, Harold. Every time they cross a line, you make an excuse. Every time they disrespect me, you tell me to give it time. Well, time's up. They've pushed too far, and I'm not tolerating it anymore. He went quiet, staring at me like he didn't recognize the woman standing in front of him. Then he whispered, You're serious, dead serious. And he turned away, muttering, I can't even talk right now, and disappeared into the bedroom. I let him go. There was nothing left to say. The next morning, I packed Jason and Chloe's things. Clothes, shoes, their electronics, whatever they had in shared spaces. I folded everything neatly into boxes and set them by the front door. Then I called a locksmith. When the man arrived, I stood outside while he worked, watching the new locks go in one by one. It felt final, like closing a chapter I hadn't realized was poisoning the story. As he handed me the new keys, he said, Rough week, huh? You could say that. He nodded, professional but kind. Sometimes you got to draw the line. Yeah, I said quietly. Sometimes you do. When Harold came home that afternoon, he couldn't get the door open. I opened it for him, standing in the frame. What is this? He asked, panic in his eyes. I changed the locks, I said. Jason and Chloe's things are packed. You can call their mom or take them yourself. Either way, they're not coming back inside until they learn some respect. His mouth fell open. Andrea, you can't. I can, I said, steady as stone. And I did. Harold stood there in stunned silence, his face pale, like the air had been knocked out of him. Andrea, please, he said finally, his voice low. They're just kids. You can't do this. They're not kids anymore, I said. They're old enough to lie, manipulate, and destroy things that aren't theirs. That means they're old enough to face consequences. His jaw clenched. You're making a mistake. No, I said calmly. I'm fixing one. He stared at the boxes by the door, at the neat labels I'd written in black marker. Jason and Chloe. He didn't move, didn't even breathe for a second. Then, as if realizing he couldn't change my mind, he pulled out his phone. Fine. I'll call their mom. Good, I said. They can stay with her until they learn basic respect. He made the call from the porch, pacing back and forth. I couldn't hear every word, but I caught enough to know she wasn't thrilled. Her voice came through the phone sharp and fast. Harold tried to calm her, but I could tell she was yelling. Finally, he hung up, exhaling hard. She's sending David, he muttered. David, Jason and Chloe's biological father, had always been polite when I'd met him at school events or handoffs. The kind of guy who smiled too much and avoided eye contact. But when his car pulled up an hour later, he didn't look polite. He looked tired. The kind of tired that comes from years of fighting battles no one else sees. He stepped out, hands in his pockets, eyes darting between me, the boxes, and Harold. Andrea, he said quietly, what's going on? I folded my arms. Your son destroyed something that belonged to my late husband, a keepsake my son treasured. Then he laughed about it. He's made it clear he doesn't respect me or this home. I'm done trying to earn his respect when he's not interested in giving any. David nodded slowly. He told me what happened, he said. Said he didn't mean to. He meant it, I said flatly. David rubbed the back of his neck. This seems extreme. I met his eyes. If your son told you that you weren't his father, that your kids didn't matter, and that your wife didn't belong in her own house, what would you do? David hesitated. His jaw flexed. Probably the same thing, he admitted quietly. Then we understand each other, I said. Jason and Chloe came down the stairs, eyes red, dragging their boxes behind them. Chloe sniffled, tears streaking her face. Jason wouldn't look at anyone. He muttered something under his breath I couldn't make out, but I caught the tone, resentment. As they reached the door, Jason finally looked up. Is this really it? This is what happens when you burn through every chance you were given, I said. He nodded once, jaw tight, and walked out. Chloe followed, glancing back just once before getting into David's car. Harold stood frozen by the wall, his hands hanging uselessly at his sides. David looked at me before getting in. For what it's worth, he said quietly, I get it. They needed a wake-up call. Then he got in the car and drove off. Tiffany, Harold's ex-wife, would have probably screamed, but Harold just stood there, eyes full of something between guilt and confusion. The taillights disappeared down the street. The silence that followed was deafening. I turned, picked up the new key the locksmith had given me, and handed it to Harold. This one's for you, I said. Jason and Chloe don't get copies. He didn't take it at first. You really think this fixes anything? He asked. It fixes the disrespect, I said, and that's a start. When I went back inside, the house was silent. No yelling, no doors slamming, no teenage whispers dripping with mockery. Just quiet. For the first time in months, it wasn't oppressive, it was relief. I sat down at the kitchen table, the same spot where I'd made my list, and let the quiet fill the room. It wasn't peace exactly, but it was something close. My chest ached, not from guilt, but from release. I had drawn a line, finally. The next morning, the house felt like it was holding its breath. No music blaring from Jason's room. No Chloe humming in front of the mirror. Just the soft clinking of spoons and cereal bowls and the faint morning chatter of birds outside. I poured myself a cup of coffee and sat down. Maya and Andrew froze when I entered, like they'd been caught doing something wrong. You two okay? I asked gently. Maya looked at Andrew first, then back at me. It's just, Quiet, she said. Good or bad quiet, I asked. She hesitated. Good, she said finally. Andrew fidgeted with his spoon. I kind of like it, Mom. Nobody's yelling or calling names anymore. That one hit harder than I expected. I realized how long my kids had been walking on eggshells in their own home. You don't have to feel bad about that, I said softly. It's okay to breathe again. They both nodded, and for the first time in months, breakfast didn't feel like a minefield. By afternoon, the quiet turned into reflection. Harold hadn't said much since the day before. He stayed in the bedroom most of the morning, then finally came out, eyes red from lack of sleep. We need to talk, he said. Yeah, I said, setting my mug down. He sat across from me at the table, hands clasped like he was holding himself together. I don't even know who you are right now, he said. You've been cold, hard. I know Jason messed up, but throwing them out, they're still kids. I took a slow breath. They're old enough to know right from wrong. You know that. You've seen how they treat me. They're hurt, he said. And so are mine, I said evenly. Do you even realize what Maya and Andrew have been through these past months? Jason calling me names. Chloe lying to neighbors. Both of them telling my kids their dad doesn't matter. They needed to learn there are limits. Harold rubbed his forehead. After the divorce, I was scared. I didn't want to lose them again, so I let things slide. And by doing that, I said quietly, you almost lost this family too. His eyes filled with something fragile, understanding. Maybe you're right, he whispered. We didn't say much after that. He went upstairs. I stayed at the table, staring out the window, watching the light shift across the yard. That evening, my phone buzzed. A number I didn't recognize at first until I opened the message. Hey, this is Jason. I'm sorry. I shouldn't have said what I said about your husband. About you. I read it twice, then 3 times. The boy who told me I wasn't his mother was now the one reaching out first. I didn't reply. Not yet. I wanted it to mean something when I did. 2 days later, David stopped by. He pulled into the driveway, and when he stepped out, he looked different. Tired, but calm. Got a minute? He asked. Sure, I said, meeting him halfway down the driveway. He leaned against his car. I didn't come to argue. I just wanted to say, they're starting to get it. Jason's been quiet, real quiet. He even helped me clean the garage yesterday without being asked. That's a first, I said dryly. David chuckled. Yeah, he told me he screwed up bad. Said you were right about respect. Chloe cried for a while. She misses her dad and Maya. I crossed my arms. I didn't want it to come to this, but they needed a line drawn. He nodded. You did what I couldn't. I kept trying to be their buddy after the divorce. I think they needed someone to be their wall, not their friend. That stuck with me. You're a good dad, David, I said. They'll come around. He smiled faintly. So are you, Andrea, even if they don't know it yet. We shook hands. No hostility between us anymore. Just mutual understanding. 2 parents trying to hold broken families together the only way we knew how. That night, I couldn't sleep. I sat at the kitchen table again, the same spot where all this had started. On the counter, Andrew's broken snow globe base was still there, the glass long gone, but the little cabin inside still intact. I picked it up and turned it over in my hands. The next morning, Harold came down early. He saw the snow globe on the table and stopped. You fixed it, he said softly. I nodded. It's not what it was, but it's standing. He looked at me, eyes full of exhaustion and guilt. Andrea, he said quietly, I'm sorry for letting it get this bad. I was scared to lose my kids again. I thought being soft would keep them close, but all it did was make them lose respect for me. And for you. I put a hand on his. Then let's start over together this time. For the first time in months, he smiled. A real one. We didn't know what came next, but at least now we were finally on the same side.